Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Chris here from Fake Sports News Axis Rotation, however the flip you know me on these interwebs, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a quick recap of what happened during Week 4 of Stage 1 of the CDL's matches that, of course, taking place during the week of January 16th through the 18th. So, hope you guys enjoyed the intro as always. Hope you enjoyed all the COD if you watched. It was a fun weekend full of a lot of surprises. You guys know if you watched last week's video, I said that last week actually had the potential to be insane. But I feel like the parity in this league is not what it used to be. Any given day, any team can come through and beat a really good team. And I feel like we all have to be prepared for that. Probably throw that clip in there. And I just had a feeling that the matches were going to be pretty froggy. And they ended up being very froggy, ladies and gents. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm not going to go super in depth with every single match because we did have quite a few 3-1s and 3-0s. So, looking at our first match, speaking of 3-0s, it was a 3-0 for the Miami Heretics. This was a pretty embarrassing 3-0 if we're being honest. The Vancouver Surge, they were just a step behind. They've had a little bit more time to practice with Tej, get comfortable, get some footing, so the excuses of it being a new team are fully out the window at this point. And honestly, Miami came through. They had no excuses, no regrets, all belt, all pedal to the metal, all high octane, all gas, and they just firebombed them. Super was the MVP of the series, 1.71, 2.75, and 0.81. We're not going to go map by map, as you guys can see. It was just a heartbreaking loss for the Vancouver Surge all the way through this one. Now, looking at our next matchup, we had the Paris Gentlemates taking on the Riyadh Falcons, and this one I will go a little bit more in depth on because this was actually a top team kind of battle, and this was the last match of the day, and it was fun. So, the exposure HP, we're not going to get into that. We'll get into the series overview first, and then we'll get into maps. I don't know why I'm going off script right now. So, looking at it, Leiji, Pred, bet on himself, bet on Pred always, and you will not be disappointed. Series MVP with a 1.14 in hardpoint, 1.5 in S&D, and a 1.33 in overload, our third game mode. Community was not rocking with the Falcons, but the Falcons said, hey, we are here, and we are going to win this series. So, they came out hot, they got a blazing 3-1, and let's see how they got it done. On the other side, Neptune was the standout for the Paris Gentlemates side. Of course, he did his very, very best, but Pred and the Riyadh Falcons just had a little bit too much pressure where it mattered. So, speaking of pressure where it mattered, looking at the map 1, of course, Kismet had a uncharacteristically bad start to the series, as did Xnid. Obviously, those two played up because they won the series, and Xnid called a game. More on that in a minute. But Paris Gentlemates came out really hot, and they looked like typical Gentlemates. Ghosty 21-9, Neptune 29-13, Envoy 17-12, etc., etc. So, map 2, Raid S&D. This is where the Falcons rebounded. They got really comfortable on the map again, and they showed everybody, hey, they're not going to run away with the series. We're right here with them, and we're a top team as well. Sib was 12-7, the lone standout on the Paris side, and then everyone on Riyadh did pretty well. Xnid 5-6, Cell 8-8, Kiz 9-5, and Pred 9-6. Map 3, Den Overload. This was the park the bus cheese. Alhamdulillah, as Pred said on Twitter. Alhamdulillah, Habibi, we parking the bus. Yeah, they just parked the bus. It was super cringe. They sat in the spawn and they just held irons literally with the overload until time ran out, and that was all she wrote. So the map 4 was a black heart, finally getting some black hearts in the rotation. Love to see that. We had Xnid and Pred, that duo from last season, dropping a duo 34 bomb for the dub. This was a super close game 4. It went down to the wire. I really thought the Paris Gentlemates would force the game 5, but the Riyadh Falcons had very, very different ideas. And Sib and Ghosty, clearly, they had matching KDs, 0.77 for both, right? So at the end of the game, clearly Sib and Ghosty were the difference makers there, and they did not make a positive difference to this team. Envoy with the 1.23, he was a standout for the entire team, and that's how that match ended. So, looking at our next matchup, we kicked off Saturday with a really, really exciting one. We had the Boston Breach taking on the Miami Heretics. You guys can see I thought it would be a Game 5 victory for the Heart Attack Breach, But no Doug, no dub, I guess was the word of the day, or the phrase of the day, let's say. Now let's look at how this all went down. We had a 250 to 248 hardpoint on Scar. We've had so many of these, but what makes this one significant is the fact that Boston was literally leading 200 to 129, I believe. I think that's where I showed the start on YouTube Shorts, and I made a compilation clip. But anyways, Boston had a generational lead on these guys in map 1, and they just absolutely gave it away, handed it right to them, and said, hey, here's the keys to the house. So, match MVP, super, not surprising, right? 1.13 from him, 0.83 in S&D, and a 1.86, excuse me, in overload. Talk to him very nice because he will put you in the dirt in COD. 1.26 from Super, he let it all hang out. Nasty was the lone man trying to do anything to stave off the Miami Heretics' really, really hot performance with a 1.09. Trakes with 1.15, shout out to the Zombies community. Rancor with a 1.2, and Metals with a 1.22. Metals has been absolutely frying, and that's why Heretics are looking so good this year. I honestly, check out the next video. I'm going to have some interesting opinions on them. Now, map 1, Scar HP. This is one we really need to talk about from this series. This went down to the wire. Boston, honestly, let's look at the game flow chart so you guys can see just how much Boston sold, right? 117 to 172, 127 to 197. That's what I was talking about. Hill 8. This is exactly what I was talking about. You notice I said 200 to about 129. So this is where they started coming back. And it looked very much out of reach. 167, 200, 239 to 169. And then Boston literally just trolled. I was like, okay. I said on the watch party, I was like, they just need to lock in. And they did not lock in. So yeah, that's how that went down. I mean, they literally just didn't lock in, and they let Miami completely overtake them, like the Lightning McQueen gif that's always posted on Twitter, where dude overtakes him, and I forget what the dude's name is. I saw the movie, but I forgot. Anyways, map 2, this was honestly just a great regain from the Boston Breach. Nasty was just like, dude, you guys gotta get it together at some point. He put up 1,500 damage and went 13 and 4 to get them the dub. He literally was just all over the map doing everything. On the other side, Metals had 10 and 8, and Rancor was the only other player to go green with an even 6 and 6. Map 3, Den Overload. I mean, this is a quick one. 1.86 from Super. He let it all hang out on him. Everybody on the Boston Breach went red. And then in the game for Blackheart HP, this of course went the way of Miami Heretics, as you guys already know, 3-1 in the series. Rancor dropped 31 and 20. He was a standout in the lobby. Snoop was the only one on the other side to even go slightly close to positive, 23 and 23. Cammy 13 and 30. Damn. And then yeah, I mean, Trakes was 29-17. He fried, and then Metals 24 and 14, and Super 23 and 19. They just had a really, really lax win. Now, looking at our next matchup, speaking of teams that had lax wins, we had the Carolina Royal Ravens putting their feet up and getting a very, very easy dub over Joe Deceives and the Toronto Koi, who we all thought were going to have a pretty handed win here, right? We all thought it was going to be, relatively speaking, a cakewalk for a team that played Faze Vegas, a team that just 3-0'd Optic Texas so tight and had looked consequently so good in their 3-0 over Optic Texas, over LA Thieves. 10 last week. Well, the week before that. So, looking at it, we had Toronto Koi and the Carolina Royal Ravens going head-to-head in a really interesting series, honestly. It wasn't like Series of the Year, but it was definitely interesting. Notice I did not say fun. I did the highlights for that, and those highlights were not highlights, I'll just be honest with you. Exceed dropped to 1.09 in HP, a 0.86 in S&D, and then a 1.58 in Overload. And then looking at the series overview, Joe Deceives went absolutely nuclear, 1.27, 105 kills, 83 deaths. Real, 85 and 81. I mean, that's just not enough support. You need more kills and more damage on the map. More importantly, I mean, Joe Deceives literally had almost 2,000 more damage than, his next best helper, that being Real. On the Carolina Royal Ravens side, this was honestly just a skill diff, team diff, whatever you want to call it. And that round 11 momentum really changed this series, it has to be said. So looking at it, the BK was a standout for the Carolina side, 1.19. He just took over. Honestly, this whole series, this was an Exceed series and an Exceed day. He just really cemented himself as being a pro player to watch. He's not the Burger King that we all knew and loved to roast back in the day. So looking at map one, speaking of people getting roasted, the Carolina Royal Ravens got spit roasted. There was some cooked pigeon. Very gamey bird here. And yeah, I mean, looking at it, Joe Deceives, he said, this bird's awfully gamey, but he ate it anyways. 1.67, 6.7, yeah, and just, I mean, I've already said it now. 1.25 from Real, 1.3 from Insight, and then, yeah, that's map one. And Kleenex 26-25. Yeah, 6.7, 6.7, 6.7. Sorry. It popped up, so. Another 6.7, 6.7, 16.7. Oh my god. Anyways, map 2 went the way of the Carolina Royal Ravens. You guys will be seeing that in the background as always, like you've come to expect if you watch these videos consistently. 12-8 from Joe Deceives, 9-8 from Real, but the thing that makes the real difference is that Craze absolutely dropped his nards on him. 16-7. He went absolutely crazy. Almost 2,000 damage in S&D. That is absolutely absurd. And yeah, I mean, there's not a lot to say there. When you have a guy going 16-7, you better win the damn round 11. So, speaking of people winning rounds, we had the Carolina Royal Ravens taking that momentum from a very tightly contested round 11 S&D into a, albeit decently close, overload. Honestly, Carolina pulled away at some point in the late half of this game. They had more map control, and Exceed was honestly just patrolling and rolling over everybody. Same with Nero. I mean, those guys were just honestly like terrors on the map. So, yeah, Carolina just had more pressure on the map consequently, and the entire time it felt like they were in control of this control. I'm sorry, this control. Freudian slip. They were in control of this overload. So, not really a lot to take away from that. Map for Blackheart HP, more of the same. I mean, Exceed was just routing people, and Craze, he just took them out, put them on the table, and told everybody to admire. Lurks, same thing. I mean, Lurks just had a quiet but very, very good series. He was a great support for the boys. And yeah, I mean, Joe Deceives 1.15, 30 and 26. He did his very best to stave off a really hot Carolina Royal Ravens who have been playing phenomenal since Slasher stepped down. So, looking at our next matchup, we had a hot 3-0 for Faze Vegas over the Cloud9 New York boys. And honestly, like, I'm not going to spend much time on this one. They did not fight back. Faze took the cheeks in record time. 0-4 looked like the best player in the world in this series. 1.69. The MF was literally hitting the Dougie and shit. Like, I mean, there's not a lot to say. 8,000 damage from 0-4. Yeah, let's look at the series MVP. 1.9, 2.67 in S&D, and a 1.28 in overload. I mean, he fried 250 to 128. Let's just look at it. Hashtag nudising. 1.9 from 0-4, 40 and 21. Belt. 32 and 25 from Simp the Pimp, his twin. Belt. And on the other side, everybody red except for Vivid, who had a, wow, Reese Vivid with the 27-26, kind of surprising. So looking at map 2, more belt, more belt, more belt. Draws the CEO 11 and 3. He's a CEO of, I guess, C9 and Optic at this point. So that is what it is. 0-4, 8 and 3. Abuza 5 and 4. Abuza with the sniper was this weekend. That brother was, my God. And then exposure, yeah, I mean, yeah. GG. 30 and 14 from Abuza. He was absolutely frying an 0-4, 23 and 18. Draza went even, and then Simp 18, 16. So not a lot to do when Abuza's doing his thing, and you guys win the game early, 8-1. I mean, the first half ended with a minute left on the clock because they scored 4 times. So one of the most dominant 3-0s we've seen in a while. Speaking of matches that were not dominant 3-0s, we kicked things off on Sunday with the Boston Breach taking on Cloud9, who got 3-0'd in the last series that we just spoke of, the last series of Saturday, and then played the first series of Sunday and got 3-2. So at least they looked better the next day. So speaking of the next day, let's look at the series overview. Match MVP was Nasty, Mr. Byron Nasty himself. He's really been taking over and routing this Boston Breach team. He's really transforming this team. Honestly, this is what Nasty was brought to this team to do. He's doing it very well, and I love to see him doing what he did for the Surge last year because Boston was in need of a guy who can really right the ship in those crucial moments where things are going wrong. the small things start to happen. They're a very panicky team. Like when their setups get pierced or things start to go slightly awry, you just see the arrows just frantically panic. So Nasty's a guy who really like brings these guys back to center and kind of, refocuses the troops. So 1.34 on the series, 95 and 71, and then Cammy gave him some great support as his AR duo, 89-77. Persh, 79 and 91, rough series from him, and Snoop, 81 and 83. So pretty quiet day from Snoopy, if we're being honest, but he did enough to help his team get the win, even though he's having a pretty bad series in terms of just watching him play. Persh had, Persh just getting tucked. And then on the other side, Beans had a standout series 1.11, and everybody on Cloud9 just struggled mightily the whole series, if we're being honest. Apart from map 1, Afro looked phenomenal. Speaking of Afro map 1, let's start off with him and his crew. Mac 30 and 23, Afro 30 and 23, Beans 31 and 23, and Reese Vivid went even with 22 and 22. And then on the Boston Breach side, the only player to do decently was Nasty, who went even 26 and 26. 250 to 212 doesn't really do that scoreline justice. I mean, C9 was just giving them belt. Boston made it respectable in the scoreline, but C9 gave them belt. Looking at the map 2, it was 6-4 in favor of the Cloud9 boys. They went up 2-0 in this series, and they looked really good. Honestly, they looked really good. Boston looked demoralized. They looked like their heads were completely gone. And yeah, it looked like Nasty was the only person who was going to get involved and be any sort of help. He had a 1.38, 11, and 8 in this map. And then on the other side, Beans and Afro, that duo, the EU duo from challengers in the past, former teammates. Beans had 10 and 5, he had a 2.0 KD, and Afro was 11 and 7 with a 1.57. So, great showing from them to secure the map 2. Then we went to Scar Overload, ran it back on Scar like the map 1. And this is where the Boston Breach were able to finally kind of sit forward and regain in the series. Just re-cement themselves as obviously the Boston Breach, right? So Cammy 27 and 25. Nasty, of course, took over. This was his series, 33 and 21, 1.57, and then Snoopy was their real support with a 1.17. Persh, he was decent, 27-28, so not bad. And then looking at the Cloud9 New York side, Afro had a really bad game. That was really the difference maker here. 14-29 is just not going to get it done. And then Beans 27 and 29, Mac 26 and 28. Very decent, respectable score lines. And then Vivid was slightly positive, 30 and 28. Very close overload. Obviously could have gone either way based on the score line. But if you get a little bit more from Afro, you would have to think that this would have likely been a 3-0. Especially with how badly Persh was playing the whole day. Like, map 3 was really where he started to wake up, but even then, his impact was, here and there. So looking at the map 4, speaking of impact being here and there, we had Colossus HP going 250, 105 in favor of the Boston Breach. Not a lot to talk about there. Cammy takeover 31 and 13. He was just waxing everybody. Snoopy 21 16 and Nasty 19 and 15. So yeah, just Cammy takeover. Game 5, speaking of takeovers, the Boston Breach absolutely took over. Nasty was 6 and 1, Snoopy 7 and 4, and Cammy 7 and 4. They took the embarrassment that was the early part of this series and just completely wiped it away, getting a reverse sweep that proves that Boston actually does have very good composure and they can really hold their, their heads in times of distress in these series where they go down and things look hopeless, right? So looking at the Cloud9 side, I don't know what you do after this. I mean, 3 and 6 in a game 5 where you get 6-0'd after going up 2-0 in the series. I think a roster change is probably the best move for them. I think this team just is not it. So looking at teams that are not it, Faze was not it on Sunday when they went up against G2 Minnesota, an org that they have always been oddly very competitive with in really weird pockets in really weird ways. Somehow, some way, no matter how bad G2 looks against everyone else, they always look their best against Faze. No matter what iteration of Faze it is, Vegas, Atlanta, Slasher, R-Cities, they always turn up. So looking at the map 1, Blackheart HP, we kicked things off with Atlanta Faze. Honestly, they came out and they looked pretty bad to start this hard point, but then they rebounded and they righted the ship and they got the dub. So looking at it, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, right? Looking at the series, we of course had Caesar Skies Bueno, the man who everyone was talking a lot of shit about absolutely taking that caca and throwing it right back at everybody who had something to say for him. You know, 1.17 in the HP, 1.57 in the S&D, and a 1.09 in Overload. He had a great series. And then on the Faze side, the only one who was really putting up numbers was Abuza. He had an amazing series, 97 and 75. The man even had a three-piece in the S&D. I'll post that during obviously, the S&D. So, looking at it, let's get into the series. Kremp, 95 and 83. I can see why Sky's MVP votes were not unanimous, right? Sky's 90 and 76, Mamba 87 and 85, and Estrel 78 and 83, so it's a little bit negative, but Estrel did his thing still. Looking at the map 1, the Blackheart HP that I just discussed a second ago, Abuza went nuclear 31 and 19, Simp 27 and 25, Draza had a slow one 23 and 27, and 04 was, of course, supporting his duo Abuza and Simp with 32 and 28. On the G2 side, everybody went negative, so it is what it is. And then the map 2, things kind of rebounded, and honestly, this is where G2 never looked back. They got a gentleman's sweep in the back half of the series, right? So clearly they never looked back after winning this huge momentum-changing round 11, right? Looking at it, Kremp dropped 11 and 7, and Skies is right there with him with a matching KD 11 and 7 as well. Mamba was 7 and 6, and then on the Faze side, Abuza dropped 13 and 7 for the L, and 04 was 9 and 8. Simp was 1 and 9. That brother dropped a breadstick at the worst time. Like Simp. This isn't Olive Garden, brother. You can't bring out all you can eat breadsticks. No breadsticks here. This is the CDL. Alright, so looking at the map 3, we had the Den Overload going the way of Minnesota Rocker. Honestly, they just had more pressure on the map, and 04 and Simp, they got absolutely Kentucky fried. They could not buy a kill in this map 3. G2 just looked phenomenal. Their teamwork was on point, their map pressure was on point, and they just looked like a very cohesive and very effective team. They looked like the G2 that we all kind of expected them to be after those early signs of brilliance we saw to start the year. Kremp 27 and 21, Skies 24 and 22, Estrel 22 and 21, Mamba 20 and 22. Then on the Faze side, the only person to be positive was Abuza, and like I said, Simp and 04 struggled mightily. Looking at the map 4, speaking of people struggling mightily, you had everybody on Faze going into the red, looking like the economy in 2009. And then you had 04, 22 and 34, Abuza 27 and 30, so slightly negative, not bad. And then Draza at 21 and 31, terrible showing from Draza and 04. Then on the G2 side, all green lights. Team Takeover was activated for those boys, especially Caesar Skies Bueno, 34 and 24. He went absolutely nuclear to close the book on this one. He hit a clip. I'll probably play that as the highlight that goes in the background. And then Mamba 32 and 25, Kremp 30 and 26, and Astral 29 and 26 to get the dub over, at the time, the number 1 seed in the CDL. So, great showing for G2 Minnesota. Of course, they cannot make winners bracket as they're currently 2 and 4 in quals, and they are below the 8th place ranked team, I believe, right? Actually, let's look at that. Let's look at the standings. So, the currently 8th ranked team is the Miami Heretics with 30 points. Oh, there's no way in hell they're passing Miami. Oh, yeah. Let's see what their schedule is, though, next week. They have one more match, right? One more match for the World Heavyweight. Oh, no, they're cooked. They're playing Toronto. Yeah, it's over. Okay, so, yeah, they don't have a chance to make winners bracket. Let's look at the last series of the weekend for a team that actually ended up making winners bracket because of this consequential win. We had the Los Angeles Thieves taking on Optic Texas. You guys know I thought it would be a rebound series for Kenny. I thought Kenny would look way better than he has in the past, and he did, and the LA Thieves won. So let's check out what actually happened in this series, how Kenny got the upset of probably the season so far, right? Everyone was talking so much trash about Kenny, how he looked last year, the fact that this year would probably be a continuation of last year since it's a very similar title. But Kenny heard all that, and he said, F all that. So he popped in, he spawned in, plugged his controller in, and he went to work. Looking at it, Kenny had a 1.15 in HP, of course, 2.75 in S&D, and a 1.37 in Overload. So this was literally a legacy series for for Kenny. This is a legacy series for Kenny. So let's look at the maps one by one. Let's look at the series overview first. Kenny, 178. Wow, that's an amazing KD, 1.28. Hydra, he rebounded. He looked great here, 1.1. Abizi finally looked amazing. I was really happy to see Abizi finally looking good with a 1.11. And then Scrap, of course, Ernie's always going to be Ernie, 1.16. And then on the other side, the only player to go positive was Hook the Nuke with a even KD, 81 and 81. Everybody else just got tucked to bed. Dash with a 0.7. Merc with a 0.87. It's pretty rare to see Merc go negative, and then Shotzi with a 0.82. So I believe Shotzi's the 50th ranked hardpoint KD in the league at the moment. So kind of interesting. Speaking of things that are interesting, we have map 1. Mercules made it very interesting, dropping 37 and 25 on this exposure HP to get Optic, the only dub that they got in this series. And then Kenny, on the other side, was matching Merc's pace with 36 and 27. Kenny had 4,000 damage. Merc had almost 4,800. And then Scrap as well had 4,000. So the AR LA Thieves put up a lot of damage. They looked really good. Dashy also had 4,000. So, you know, his kill count doesn't really show it, but he's putting a lot of pressure on the map. And then the SMGs for Optic and Faze. I'm sorry, Optic and Faze. Optic and Thieves. They both sets were like doing okay. But it's exposure. Exposure's more long sight lines, so you're not really expecting your subs to always go crazy, but they definitely can, especially in that P2. Now looking at the Scar S&D, we of course had this going 6-1 in favor of the LA Thieves. Yeah, I mean, I guess they need some leg room. So yeah, Kenny 11 and 4, Scrap 8 and 3, Hydra 5 and 5, and BZ 3 and 5. And then on the Optic side, everybody in the red, whole lot of red. Speaking of a whole lot of red, that continued on the exposure overload, where Optic got absolutely hosed, bro. 0.64 from Dashy, 0.69 from Merc, 0.76 from Shotzi, and then on the LAT side, everybody went positive. BZ with the 1.15, Hydra with the 1.44, Kenya with the 1.37, and Scrap with the 1.23. So looking at the map 4, Kenny just whipped it out, and that was that. You know, this whole series, apart from this map, Abizi whipped it out here. He was 30 and 22. Scrap was 30 and 27. Hydra 32 and 29. And then on the other side, Dashy had his first positive map in the series. No roast, no hate, with a 1.04, and Hook had a 1.23. So Hook was honestly having a decent enough series map by map. It's just everybody else had such bad production. Merc had a 0.58. He was literally no help in this HP. And then Shotzi had a 0.83. So he was low impact as well. Yeah, I mean, looking at this series, it was really just Kenny showing up, Abizi showing up, and that being the difference maker. So it gave us a glimpse of what Thieves can be when they play a top team and they actually show up and they consistently play to the potential that we all know all 4 of those players can. They might not all show up every single map, but if 3 of them show up every single map, I mean, they have a great chance to win any series. Because you have to figure when you play top teams, there always is a chance that 2 people have a mulligan, right? Like looking at that Faze versus G2 series, Draza, Simp, and 04, they all traded off. Each map, there were 2 of them that were just playing badly, and that's why G2 was able to rout them and just beat them decisively. They weren't all on the same page. Same thing happened here with LA Thieves and Optic. Shotzi and Merc were just not on the same page with Dashy and Hook, and Dashy at different times was not on the same page with Shotzi and everyone else. So, yeah, that's really the nature of it. You're just trying to isolate as many variables as you can, and that's how the LA Thieves got a 3-1 over Optic Texas. Hope you guys enjoyed this recap. Had to make it kind of long because this week was absolutely nutty, as you guys can see. We had so many upsets, so many crazy things happened. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. Hope you have a great morning, noon, or night, like I always say on these videos. I am working with codstats.com, so as you guys will be seeing in the next few days, I'm going to be uploading original content, looking at different player stats and different interesting things that I want to study and examine in more depth, like I have with the top 10 players, player rankings, power rankings, etc., etc. So, hope you guys enjoy what I'll be doing there. Going to be trying some different things just to spice it up a little bit, throw some stuff at the fridge and see if that pasta sticks, you know. So, hope you guys enjoyed. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. If you watched this far, I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you on the next video, which will be a preview of what to expect going into Week 5, our final week of Stage 1 quals before the Stage 1 Major in beautiful Dallas, Texas. Now, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Once again, this is Chris from Esports News, Act Rotation, however the flip you know me, these in red, and I'll see you guys then. Peace!